Kono mo yon arin nganga. Pada yon orang. Yebedan jawal koralan. Tibidi kon. Aru jari jawal melon jon. Tarkalam jawal jar. Ambrun jara. Hello, good morning. My name is Irene Davy. I just said that the story that you're going to listen to is our true stories about our people across the Kimberleys. The senior leadership group went around and met with the claim groups within the area and just letting them know about how we can try and record some of our stories, and if they were interested in telling some of the stories. Esther, Bevan and I talked about the resistance, survival, and adaptation theme. Just, you know, what it was really like for our people, adapting to the new way of living and surviving. So that's just some of the stories and histories about right across the assessment area, and it's just very important for you to understand some of it.
When we talk about that resistance, you're speaking about the cattle industry, specifically, I suppose, or more importantly, in the East Kimberleys, and the Fitzroy Valley area when the pastoralists came across from Queensland and New South Wales for grazing country for their cattle.
Some of our leadership men, cultural advisors, talk about their experience with the pastoral industry and how it was for them in that day.
I grew up in a station, and I've been born in a station. I was born in Nugunbar station, and then my mother and father took me back to place where they came from, bush. And then I grew up in Gogo station. That's why I started to learn a bit of English and learn to work. I've been just thrown into stock, you know. Best thing is my learning, put a bridle on the horse and saddle the horse and start to ride a horse. And then every holiday time come, we have a holiday, you know. We got teach from our old people. Old people used to take us bush, living in the bush together, and learn about culture. We come back to station every work time. We used to go back in a job again. We had nowhere to go because that's our place to live.
And they want to say that was no money, no big money, no anything.
No.
We only work for bread and beef, that's all.
Yeah, no money.
For a long time, and after we see that money, £1, £2 after that, we come in.
Yeah, when the equal wages legislation came in, a lot of our people moved away from the stations into towns, and on the fringes of towns, that's when the ration camps and some small missions were started. And from there, people moved and got houses in the major towns. But it was still hard. But and they still went back to their bush for their cultural practices.
And how very different then people had to go somewhere, and it was usually to somebody else's country. And after a while, the government, and I suppose the rest of Australia, thought, well, we just can't leave them there, you know, we sort of drifted onto the fringes of towns that were in existence at that time.
I had little kids there in Derby, and Derby was the main port for Sunday Island. I mean, you look at missions like Fortune and Carmania people where they were taken away and put in the fringes of Derby Marsh again. But our men, our elders in those days were very strong. So we had dancing on the marsh area there in Derby. And then our elders said, we can't live here. This is not what it was like for us, you know. We still had the culture inside us. You know, one of my uncles was in Bangrang. He was sick. They said he had leprosy. When my father went to visit him, he said to my father, like, even with the customs, you know, they never spoke and called each other by name. It was Bargiban. He said, go to that Bulgan, that tree in the creek, that certain area, that tree is there. Go and cut it to that part. When my dad did that, my uncle, all that marking that everybody, doctor said it was leprosy, just came clean. So that's the kind of thing, you know. Not all people have that connection to the tree, the ochre, the sand, or whatever, or the stone. People that thought they knew what was good for us, but really, that's the worst thing they ever did, was take people away from their country.
So the only phenomenon, but it was one of the most telling, was the stolen generation and how they were herded onto missions, if you like. But the resilience of Aboriginal people and how they survived it all, and how with groups like Bardi people, you survive and then you adapt. This is our country, we've had enough, we're going to fight for our country. And one of the greatest examples to me as an Aboriginal person is when the Nukunba, when the drilling came and they wanted to look for oil there, and how the Kimberley people got up, you know, sort of rose up and resisted that. But and it showed the rest of this country and the rest of the world that, you know, that we weren't so just sitting down and. But one of the greatest things I look at that came out of that Nukunba resistance, or whatever movement you'd like, from that came one of the three most powerful organizations in the Kimberleys, which is the Kimberley Land Council, the Kimberley Language Resource Center, and the Kimberley Aboriginal Law and Culture.
My brother-in-law, Frank Davey, talks about the pearl shell and the significance of it to the Bardi mob and the impact of the pearling industry on our culture.
We used it as a ceremonial thing for our culture, but still the pearl shell is being used in public ceremonies like